Hi there, welcome to SO Live. I'm Danny Flexen. As you can see, this week, once again, I've been abandoned. Everyone close to me leaves me. I think that probably says more about me than the quality of the podcast. So please don't drop out and leave like the rest of them have. We will be joined, however, by Scottish heavyweight Nick Campbell at around 4:15 to talk through Daniel Dubois against Joseph. We know that Frank Warren joins in April next year to go alongside Eddie Hearn. But this week, Bob Arum was on a podcast, not this one, unfortunately. Offer's always there, Bob, saying that he might package some of the top rank content and stick that on DAZN as well. So we'll be talking a fair bit about that. But first of all, if you haven't been here before, we are Seconds Out Live, the most interactive show on boxing YouTube. Please do give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and do get your comments and questions in. We'll get through, or I'll get through as many of those as I can in the next 50 minutes. Because as regular watchers will know, when I'm here on my own, which is rare and hopefully won't happen again for a while after today, I do have to leave at 10 to 5 to take my son over to kickboxing. We got away with it last week because Eamon was here as well. So I was able to leave him manning the fort, so to speak, personing the fort in this era, maybe, but it would be a better choice of words. And then I was able to come back almost undetected, stealthy like a ninja, and rejoin the chat. But that won't be happening this week. So let's go to the chat first of all, and then we'll get the poll out, get things going. So Dennis Core, who I saw got in nice and early. I don't know if he's one of the cores. Maybe you could give us send us a few bars, Dennis, and we'll decide if you're worthy of that legendary Irish band. I sleep, eat, and dream boxing. Have all the channels so I don't miss a beat. Great boxing over the weekend. Denzel Bentley did good, and the two brothers. Do you mean two brothers and the actual brothers, or the same way that Steve Bunce misconstrued Derek Chisora that time? If you know, you know. Dennis Court also goes on to say, whiskey and talking boxing, nothing better on a cold, windy day. Stephen Butterworth, I don't know if he's on, if he's part of the Seconds Out team this week or not. He's certainly not here helping me with the podcast, unfortunately, except in the chat. Says, afternoon, all Seconds Out consumers. It appears we're having trouble with the Daniel Kinahan interview we recorded with Eamon Khan. We are still waiting for clearance. For people that don't know Stephen and his in character sort of joking around, we haven't got an exclusive coming with Daniel Kinahan. However, Eamon Khan, hot off the press, has just spoken to Dillian White in London ahead of that return in Gibraltar on Sunday. And Dillian White was his typical voluble self, had lots to say about his heavyweight rivals. So you can watch that. Please don't do it right now, unless you can watch two things at once. But rather you waited until the end of the podcast. October Red, evening lovelies, just passing through, showing the channel some love. Lovely to see you too. I don't know what it's going to take to get October Red to actually stay for a whole episode of SO Live. We wait to find out. Toby Bartlett, welcome Toby. Salute Seconds Out in the chat. Appreciate that. Stephen's back again. He says, in the meantime, there you go. He's beat me to it. Enjoy our recent Dillian White exclusive interview. He's fighting the monster, Mr. Tete, this Saturday in Gibraltar. Yeah, apparently Noya Inoue may be suing Tete for use of that moniker. Toby Bartlett, hi Danny. Hope you're well, mate. I am well. October Red saying the sound's playing up unless it's my headphones. Well, I hope it's your headphones. It doesn't seem to be playing up for me. But Modfather Vinny, if there are any audio issues, please do let me know. Thunder Road says, did Seconds Out wish Josh Green best of luck with his future endeavours? I don't believe Josh Green has left the business entirely, unless you know something I don't. But he obviously works on our darts channel predominantly, especially around December and January when there's a lot of Arrows content going on. Dennis Core says, let's get ready to rumble. That definitely wasn't the cause. PJ and Duncan, I believe. Those another, legendary band in their own right. Toby Bartlett saying hi to Abs. Hope all is well with you. It helped if I can see myself on the screen. Hey. All right, guys, sorry about that. Not sure quite what happened. Technical difficulties. I blame myself, as I always do. It's the Jewish side of my family. It's Jewish guilt. But I am now back. Hopefully you can all see me. And I'll get straight back to the chat. Vinny, if you, Modfather Vinny, do let me know if anything goes wrong on our own chat, and I'll come back to you. Yeah, inauspicious start. Thanks, Thunder Road. Says no DB Cooper in the chat either. This might not be worthy of a thumbs up. Need to keep the standards. Oh, DB Cooper's joined now. He was on a Zoom call bollocking some, I can't say that, first-year associates. I'm with you, Danny. Just can't get the staff these days. Shaking my head. Thanks, DB Cooper. I think you not being here was what caused the malfunction at the junction. But we're back now. Hopefully it will last long enough to get to 10 to 5. DB Cooper one says, never mind, seems like I'm not missing much. I told you, Danny boy, connect to 4G and claim back on expenses. Stop blaming the Jews. I'm blaming my Jewish heritage, not Jews around the world. We're not making this the first anti-Semitic episode of Seconds Out Live, because it'd almost certainly be the last as well. October Red says, yes, all good, Danny. Appreciate that. You're going to save the whole episode now? Because there's only 40 minutes of it left after those issues. But yeah, thanks all for coming back. We're going to start off this week by talking about Bob Arum potentially joining Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn over at DAZN. We'll put up the tweet that Arum sent in a minute, but we are going to get the poll out nice and early. And we're basically asking you, do you think having all three major promoters, if that's what we're categorizing them as, on the same platform is a good thing, a bad thing, or you've got mixed feelings? Let us know, and we'll read out the results at the end of the episode. And Modfather Vinny, once you've put the poll up, I'm giving you plenty to do at the moment, and you can't rely on me to keep my connection stable either. Can you please put up on screen the tweet that Michael Benson reported about Bob Arum and what he said on that pod? It's horrible to a dodgy start. Does he mean we're off to a dodgy start? It's a horrible dodgy start. I mean, he's right both ways. But here at Seconds Out, we roll with the punches. Danny Flexen will power on as usual. I will do my best. October Red says it's a good thing. I hope she's voted in the poll. Is the poll up? Vinny? There it is. Oh, the tweet's certainly up. So Michael Benson said, Bob Arum has revealed that Top Rank are set to have a meeting with DAZN amid rumours their broadcast deal with ESPN will not be renewed next year. They've asked for a meeting with us, said Arum. We don't want to be exclusive to anyone. We're going to have different packages for different networks and different streaming platforms. DAZN are doing a great job in boxing. Bob Arum did previously call it Dead Zone, just as Frank Warren did. And the people who run DAZN are friends of ours. I think it's possible. So, yeah, very interesting. Not only that they're planning to go over to DAZN, but also that they're planning to split up their content into different packages. Not sure how that will work. Will they have kind of the stars of tomorrow, the prospects, on one package and their world championship level fighters on another? Or will it be female boxing as one package and male boxing as another? How will they split it? I think that will be very interesting. October Red tells me the poll's up. So well done, Modfather Vinny. So please do vote in the poll. Having all major promoters on DAZN or any platform, as long as they're sharing one, good thing, bad thing, or mixed feelings. I guess I'll go through what I think about it, and then you guys can vote on the poll as well. I mean, you can vote now if you want. You don't have to listen to me. But yeah, so first of all, good side is that it should make it easier for some of the bigger fights to get made between those promoters specifically. You would think all, DAZN will be wanting those crossover fights, if you like, between the different promoters. The money will be there to make them. It should make a even closer working relationship than the one we have seen develop between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. And Warren's already got quite a close relationship with Bob Arum. That's not always been the case with Eddie and Bob. So maybe we'll see them now come closer together, which wouldn't be a bad thing. I suppose on the negative side, it leads to a bit of a monopoly. Something people were worried about, I suppose, with the rise of Riyadh season under Turki Al Sheikh as well, in that the power is centered all with one body or a group of bodies. Having everyone on DAZN, and obviously the Riyadh season shows are on there as well as being on Sky Sports and TNT in the UK. There is a concern there that some of the promoters who aren't already affiliated with DAZN could be, in effect, left out, isolated from the main power base and the money that's involved. If you're a boxer fighter, for example, in the UK, and you want to get on a Riyadh season show, or you want to fight one of the big names that are hosted by Hearn, Warren, Arum, that could become more difficult. They might want to keep things more in-house between the three of them being on DAZN. So I guess I've got mixed feelings, as has DB Coop one, who says, I don't see how DAZN is sustainable with £8 billion in losses and counting. The market for just boxing isn't big enough to feed everyone. Maybe this is their kind of last big throw of the dice. All the major fighters under one banner, similar to what PBC tried to do a few years ago, and hope that that's the thing that gets all the casual viewers there and kind of cuts into their competitors. Because I guess the only way DAZN's going to grow big enough to make a profit is to marginalize the impact of the other broadcasters in the market. So we'll have to see if that happens. Thunder Road very kindly says, gave a thumbs up regardless. Danny is doing his best solo. He has a lot of experience with that. I mean, if you're referring to what I think you're referring to, Thunder Road, I do sometimes just phone it in. I've got to be honest. I'm not always up for treating myself. Just depends how I feel on that given day. We've already heard too much about that. If Thunder Road is even talking about what I assume he's talking about, with his mind in the gutter as usual. I'm not doing it solo, it being this podcast in that context, because I've now been joined by Scottish heavyweight Nick Campbell. Nick, how you doing?
Danny, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, mate, anytime. For viewers of the channel may know that my most recent interview with Nick has gone live on the channel about an hour ago, where he breaks down what we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. Daniel Dubois defending his IBF heavyweight title for the second time against Joseph Parker on February the 22nd in Riyadh. Two men that Nick knows incredibly well, having sparred both over countless rounds and also been a training partner to Parker for a couple of years. But we'll be talking about that in due course. But Nick, as we've got you on a bit early, well, it's not early for you. It's because I was lost to the audience for 5 minutes. Some might say that's a good thing because I had some connection issues. But I can ask you about the topic in segment one. As you can see, we're talking about Bob Arum, the potential of him and Top Rank putting a package of content out on DAZN next year alongside Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren from April. What do you make of that if we end up with those three promoters all on the same platform?
I mean, I don't think it's surprising considering the way things are going out in Saudi. You know, all three platforms are kind of operating under that banner now. So it makes sense that they all get together in terms of broadcasting, and it means all the fighters with those networks and with those promoters can fight one another without having to worry about other factors because it's all in the one program in DAZN. But I suppose it's maybe not a great thing. I don't think anything's ever too good to monopolise it completely. So maybe in the long term, it's not the best for boxing, but it's just the way it's moving, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's the issue with it being an app as well. I don't want to sound like old man yelling at clouds, although, you know, often that is where you'll find me. But it's not terrestrial TV. It's not even satellite TV or whatever we call that now. I know, what is it? Linear TV is what we used to call terrestrial. It's an app. Not everyone's going to be aware of it. It's not going to have... So Warren's going from TNT to DAZN. They have at times promoted the boxing content through things like Champions League football on TNT. Sky Sports, you've obviously got a rolling 24-hour news channel in Sky Sports News, and you've got a lot of other major sporting events, whether it be cricket, golf, NFL, etc., that you can use to promote the boxing. DAZN are very much a boxing-specific channel. I know they do a few other bits, but they're known for boxing. How is the casual audience, which DAZN needs if it's going to be sustainable, how will they find their way to DAZN? I mean, I guess this is a step in the right direction, and some of the bigger name fighters that were previously not on the app now are. But is that going to be enough? I suppose that's the worry. What do you think about that side of it, Nick?
I think the way the demographic in terms of younger viewers is going, everything's going on to this sort of streaming platform. So I'd say 90 to maybe even 100% of people under the age of 21, 25 stream probably the majority of anything they watch on the TV. So maybe they've looked at that and thought, you know, this is a platform, it's a streaming platform, but we want to move away from the older demographic, try and target the younger audience. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know, mate. You know, what's wrong with the older demographic? DB Cooper one says, I worry if things go tits up, what are we going to do? Go back begging to the big broadcasters who we fobbed off, who have shut down their boxing operations. I mean, that is a concern in that, you know, if everyone moves to DAZN now, and by everyone, I mean promoters and the audience, the likes of Sky Sports, who apparently are already thinking about moving away from boxing or investing less money in it, you know, are they going to come back? Are they going to see any reason to? Are they going to see a market for it? And, you know, how long's it been since we saw any sort of professional boxing on ITV or BBC? That seems further away than ever. So, yeah, it's the way the world's going, but is it better for the future of boxing? It's certainly better for the boxers at the moment because they'll get the bigger fights and they're getting career high paydays. It's just whether, you know, moving forward, is boxing itself going to become a bigger sport or is it going to be increasingly marginalised? Thunder Road starts with some blasphemy, unfortunately. He says, never heard of Nick Campbell. Thunder Road, carry on like that. I'm going to put you on the naughty step or whatever we call it. Prime out.
I've never heard of him either, to be honest.
Yeah, he's never heard of Thunder Road. Wait till you hear the follow-up, though. Has he fought Jay McFarlane? McFarlane is the gatekeeper for Scottish heavyweights. Not only has Nick Campbell fought Jay McFarlane, he's beaten him for the Scottish heavyweight title. So I guess that makes Nick the representative for all Scottish heavyweights now, unless we adopt Martin Bacoli, which I'm assuming, Nick, you have an objection against that because he threatened your number one status.
Listen, I think Big Martin's for the Congo, so I don't need to worry too much about it, even though he might live in Scotland. But nah, listen, my question for Thunder Road would be maybe, you know, who's he if he didn't realise that I battered Jay and he knows who Jay is? So
that's a very good point. Yeah, he's heard of Jay McFarlane, but not you. Madness. Stephen says, I wonder what it was like sparring Daniel Dubois. Well, you'll find out in a few minutes. Well, not directly. I'm not sending Daniel Dubois around to your house, but Nick Campbell will tell you. Jesus, even with 14-ounce jabs. Keep going, Nick Powell. Luke Fury says it can only be a good thing. Boxing needs monopolising to get the best fights more consistently. The only negative is the horribly biased DAZN company men always cheering on the house faves. Specifically, Luke, who are you talking about? Please do name names. Oh, and Misfits, he says afterwards as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big Misfits fan, but there's no denying it's been basically subsidising DAZN's boxing content over the last year.
But you're going to get that on any platform, aren't you? Like,
yeah,
of course.
It's like a necessary evil, isn't it?
Aye, like whoever's paying your wages, you're not going to go against your boss, are you? So that's what it is. Like, what do you want? You can't have it always. Do you know what I mean?
Although Nick Campbell, if you do employ him as a pundit for the upcoming February 22nd card, will be completely impartial and outspoken where necessary.
Of course, always.
DJ Pat says the only thing missing then is PBC. The question is when they will be included under the DAZN banner. That Top Rank chooses DAZN is more a natural step than standing outside the zone. Well, yeah, better to be inside the tent pissing out than outside pissing in, as they say. Although Top Rank, as we noted with Bob Arum's tweet earlier, he's only considering putting a package of fights or a package of shows on DAZN. He's not looking to put all his eggs in one basket. Hakan Johansson, Ringside Live, says, good evening, lads. Good evening, Hakan. Hope you're well. Thunder Road says, if Nick has beaten Jay, then I'll put him on my radar. Well, I bet it's the biggest moment of your life, Nick, surely. Scotland is coming through big on SO Live with Billy Nelson weeks back, and now Nick, don't call me Luke Campbell. Yeah, it does seem like whenever I'm left on my own, the only people I'll allow to join me are Scottish people connected with boxing. But I don't know. Who does that leave me? I'll have to get Jay on. I'll have to get Jay on next time.
Mate, if you get Jay on, I'm not watching again.
You've already beaten him. He's got nothing to prove. Yeah, so we did put out a poll at the start of the show with this news that Bob Arum is considering going over to DAZN, or at least putting some of his fights or fighters on there. And we said having all the major promoters, or three major promoters in this case, on one platform, is it good? How do you feel about it? Sorry, good, bad, or mixed feelings? Let us know, and we'll read out the result at the end of the show in about half an hour. Luke Fury says, I meant Misfits as another negative. Yeah, no, I'm aware, Luke, and I agree, although a lot of people like it. Chris Mannix has terrible scorecards. Sergio Mora is painfully biased for Latin fighters. And Tony Bellend, I don't think that's his real name, is the worst pundit ever. Hold on, how do you get Tony Bellew, Mora, and Mannix? Surely you're watching either in the UK or the US. Or even if you're watching in a dodgy way on a stream, surely you're only getting one of the two. I don't understand how you'd end up with Bellew and the American side. You might have to let us know about that. October Red says, the Scots are lovely folk. That's why. Are you going to stay for the whole episode now, October? Now you know that we've got another fine, lovely Scottish person on. Is that enough to convince you to watch a whole episode instead of just passing through? We're going to start calling you October Passing Through Red. Get this every couple of weeks. It's only when I'm here on my own as well, although you don't actually say anything in the chat when I'm not here, so maybe I should take it as a compliment. So that's the DAZN thing. Please do vote in the poll. With Nick here, and to take advantage of his expertise, we should move on to segment number 2, which is, of course, Daniel Dubois against Joseph Parker. Now, we got quite lucky, Nick. I don't know if you saw last week's episode of the podcast, but we were talking a lot about the February 22nd card. And about 2 hours after the podcast finished, it got confirmed with the full lineup. So it made us look incredibly wise when we're really not. But yes, Daniel Dubois, Joseph Parker has been rumoured for a long time. It is actually happening. If you want an in-depth look at Nick's experience with both guys involved, you can, once the podcast finished, of course, you can watch the interview, the breakdown. We called it Nick Campbell's breakdown of Dubois Parker on Seconds Out. But just briefly, Nick, tell us about the sparring. We'll start with Parker. Obviously, you worked with him for a lot longer than you did with Dubois. Is the sparring different when you get to know someone more on a personal level? Is it less competitive, more competitive? How does the friendship impact the sparring?
I mean, yeah, you need to be realistic. Yeah, it probably does change the dynamic a bit, but at the end of the day, we're professional athletes, professional sportsmen, and you want to go out there, and it probably adds a little bit of edge. You want to punch your mate in the face when you get a chance to sometimes. So, listen, sparring's not about going out and trying to knock anybody out, but you want to get the best of the work, and you want to push, obviously, each other as well. So, yeah, probably like in terms of want to kill one another, not so much, but want to push one another, like without question, try and push each other as much as we could to the max.
And how does that compare to sparring Dubois, like when you first joined their camp? Because obviously you hadn't sparred him before, as we've talked about a number of times. He's not the biggest talker. He's not the most sociable. How does that compare to kind of, you're all friendly with Joe, then you get in the ring and spar, whereas with Daniel, it's very much separated, not cold necessarily, but certainly no more than professional.
Yeah, listen, completely different. Daniel's kind of mindset is I'm there to work. He walks into the gym, puts his hands out, wrap my hands please, jumps into the ring, does his warm-up, and as a sparring partner you just need to be ready for whenever you get called. And when you're in there with him, his mindset is to try and take you out pretty much. That I think that's just when I'm in the ring, my job is to try and beat whoever's in front of me by any means necessary, and that's what he does. So it's definitely a different environment to be in. But listen, it was enjoyable. I loved, working with him and Don as well. Don's a great guy, so it was great to be in that gym in London and working hard and obviously pushing yourself as well. You're in against a world-class fighter, so it was always good to challenge yourself and know that you could mix it with those lads.
Good to hear. Now, I'm just going to go to the chat and then we'll come back and talk a bit more about Dubois and Parker, although there's a question from October Red here that I think we should also field. DB Coupon says, isn't there only one DAZN broadcast that goes out globally? Agree they're all awful. Also, happy belated birthday, Nick. That's good. Luke Fury says, Bellew doesn't do much commentary, but he's usually doing the punditry. I do watch third-party streams, though. Don't worry, Luke. We won't send anyone around your house. Duncan Rogers says, that Pommy talks too much. I am now that Pommy. Give the man a chance to talk. I do plan to, but I'm trying to go to the chat as well. October Red has asked Nick, I would like to hear about the David Adelaide sparring, considering what happened on Saturday. And that was obviously Adelaide getting a first-round win for the English title against Sol Dakers. I was ringside for that. I actually missed the finishing punch. I had to watch it back on social media afterwards because I looked down for a second and it was all over. But yeah, what was the sparring with David Adelaide like, Nick?
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest, I was a bit surprised. I rate both fighters. I didn't see that happening in the first round. But listen, it's heavyweight boxing, so all it takes is one shot, switch off for a second, you could be winning the whole fight, and that's it, game over. But no, listen, it's a shot that he was throwing a lot in sparring. It's obviously a shot that him, Adam Booth, and the coaching team had been working on. It's maybe something that they'd seen that could work against. So aye, and listen, he can punch. David Adelaide can really fight. So yeah, it didn't surprise me that shot hurt. So maybe even although I was surprised it was stopped in the first, but no, great shot. The sparring was good work. Worked together with him for about a week in Dublin. He came over to spar me and Joe, and like I say, it was a shot he was throwing a lot in sparring. So wasn't surprising to see him get the job finished with that.
Great stuff. Now, getting back to Dubois against Parker, when we did the interview last week, we talked a little bit about different qualities the two have and who's better at different things. I thought it might be a quick way to go through the preview of the fight by going through a few of those categories, especially for people who didn't see the interview. So first of all, the one everyone's going to ask, and I already have asked you once, Who hits harder?
Dubois. Yeah, listen, Daniel's a massive puncher. Every single shot as well, there's weight behind it, especially his jab, which I touched on in the interview. Is probably his most underrated punch. But nah, listen, I'm not saying that Joe doesn't punch hard, he does, trust me. But in terms of pure power, then I would probably have to side with Dubois on that.
Now, I hope the next one you've tested out directly. Who has the better chin?
Do you know what? I would have to call it a draw. I think they both got great chins. I
thought you were saying they're both terrible. I've chinned them both.
No. Listen, I think if you look at Joe's obviously got the one knockout defeat against Joyce, but I think he was exhausted then. I know that there was a few things going on behind the camp. He probably never had the best camp building up to it, and he just looked tired, almost more exhausted than knocked out, if that makes sense. I think Daniel, the 2 times that he's been stopped, one, I think Usyk was just too much for him to get his head round, and he just broke him down. I don't think he was knocked out. And then against Joyce, obviously, he suffered the orbital fracture. So, both get great punch resistance, both tough men. So, I would have to score that a draw.
Who's got the better jab?
Probably Daniel. As like I said, it's probably most of it. I think it's his best punch. Joe probably doesn't need to use his jab as much as Daniel does to get inside and do his work. So I think go with Daniel.
Who has the better footwork?
Yeah, Joe. I think Daniel's actually got very underrated feet. And I think, especially when I was unsparring him, a lot of people say he got caught with loads of right hands against Hergovic. He actually uses his feet really well to get out of trouble. But I do think that Joe is the silkier boxer with higher boxing IQ, and I do think he's more fluid in his movement. And I'd have to go with Joe on that.
Would you say Parker's got the better defence overall, not just footwork, but head movement, upper body movement, and so on?
Yeah, I think that. But Joe's got the better ability to adapt. I don't think Daniel can really adapt his style. His style is his style. Can you stop him doing it? With Joe, he's a bit more versatile. He can mould himself better to a few different styles and pick a game plan that's going to work for him in a fight, as opposed to Daniel's just going to come in, set a high pace, try and bowl you over with shots.
And I'm trying to think of getting the right one before we finish. Boxing IQ.
Joe. Definitely think. Listen, I think they're both world-class fighters. Do you know what I mean? Daniel's a world champion. Joe's a former world champion. So it's probably a bit unfair to say they've not got IQ. Of course they do. But I do think, like I touched on, Joe's much more adaptable. I think Joe can mould himself to a game plan that's going to suit him in a particular fight. And also, I think the work that he's done with Andy in the past 18 months, the fights that he's been in the past 18 months, just give him a little bit of an edge in boxing IQ. If you look at Daniel's wins, they were seek and destroy. There was a tactic, but that tactic was to get in there, smash the guy, move on to the next fight. With Joe, he's had to go in there against Wilder, who's arguably the biggest puncher in the heavyweight division, or was the biggest puncher in the heavyweight division. Zhang, another guy who's arguably one of the best or biggest punchers in the division. So he had to go in with a specific game plan and stick to that game plan, adapt his style, and work on shots and training that were going to work for these specific guys. Daniel just goes in and smashes you. So I'd have to edge with Joe.
And we'll come back to you in a minute, Nick, for your final prediction about how the fight's actually going to pan out. I'm just going to go to the chat briefly. And if you are just tuning in, we've got a poll up asking about Bob Arum's comments regarding moving some of his fighters or fights to DAZN. We're just asking you if the major 3 promoters currently, Hearn, Warren and Arum, all move to DAZN. Is that good, bad, or do you have mixed feelings? Let us know. We'll read out the result at the end of the episode. DB Cooper one's just asking if you sparred both Dubois and Parker. I'm guessing that chat's aged like milk. Luke Fury says DAZN is a great platform. They just need to tone down the cheerleading. Worst example was Canelo versus Bivol. The unofficial scorer had it a draw. Yeah, I mean, that is a shocking scoreline. Cuss's system. Dennis, good to see you. He says, Nick was sparring both. Whom would you say is easier to hit? Well, you've kind of answered that already. I hope that satisfies Dennis. October Red says thank you to Nick for answering regarding Adelaide. Connor Tren, I'm not making any further comment on that handle. Says Joshua is trash, not good enough to lace Fury's boots. We're not even talking about Joshua and he's catching strays, so seems a little bit unfair. Stephen is asking October Red, did you go all the way down to London and didn't get a press pass for fight night? Wish all well. Stephen, don't be starting to start any beef between October Red and Seconds Out. You're not even an official Seconds Out member yet. Luke Fury says, nothing wrong with Dubois' chin, to be fair. Never seen him visibly hurt. Lacking heart or stamina, though. Can't put my finger on it, but he quit 2 times. I'm not sure if I'd say he quit against Usyk. Luke Fury's got to run now and he'll catch rest later, so we can't really argue back with him. He's just vanished. Stephen says, Daniel Dubois felt like he was fighting 2 men against Usyk. Against Joshua, it was a similar theme with Marcus McDonnell, but Dubois seemingly learnt his lesson. I don't know. I mean, I think against Usyk, it depends how you fall on the kind of low blow situation, but I don't think necessarily there was an issue there. Oh, Mr. Lucas, sorry, wait, it was a low blow, pal, laughing emoji. Yeah, I mean, I've watched it so many times now, I'm not even sure what I'm looking at anymore, but I think he's recovered well from that and his mental strength has grown from it, regardless of, and maybe it wouldn't have if he'd have just got the victory then. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise. October Red says, we're all a happy boxing family this side, lol. Exactly, there you go. All love in the room. So yeah, Nick, going back to Dubois against Parker, what sort, before you give us your prediction, because I know you've already done it on our interview, so you're not scared of putting your head above the parapet, but what sort of fight do you expect? What do you think the pattern of the fight will be?
Listen, I think, like I said, Daniel only knows one way. And he's going to come out and try and smash Joe early on. He's going to come out. He's going to set a high pace. There's going to be no feeling out. I think you're just going to have to get in there and deal with what he's putting in front of you. Having said that, I think that Joe's going to be prepared for that. I think he's going to come in with a game plan that him and Andy will have worked on. And, of course, Daniel's going to come in with a game plan that Don's worked on as well. But I just feel that, yeah, high octane right from the start. Don't blink. I think it'll be a great heavyweight fight. Very high paced, high skill level, plenty of bombs getting thrown, and yeah, great for all the fans.
And obviously the key question, who wins and how?
Yeah, listen, I think if you look at how Daniel's performed, I know he's only 27 years of age, but like I said, you know what you're going to get from him. We know what he can do. He's a great fighter, massive puncher, but I think he's performed what you've seen as the best of him, and I think he can maybe get a little bit better at doing that, but I don't think there's much more to go in that kind of, I don't think he's got a much more of a higher trajectory than he already shown. He can maintain that, but I don't think he can go above it. I think with Joe, the work he's done in the past 18 months, and especially this last 8-month block when he's not been fighting, I think it's going to really, show in this fight. Joe's coming in bigger, stronger, fitter than he's ever been. I think he's going to come in with a game plan, and I just think that he's going to nick it down the back stretch of the fight. I think probably points, but I could see it being a late stoppage for Joe.
Good stuff. Hackhands Ringside Live says it's good for us outside the UK and the US if the major promoters join DAZN. Queensbury and Top Rank shows are not available in Sweden. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. That's a very good point. DB Cooper 1 says you should hire our mate Stephen Butterworth as a freelancer. Send him to Dubai, get that Daniel Kinahan interview he wants so bad. I'll pay for his flights. You guys can sort that out offline. If you're willing to finance it, we're willing to put it up. If he makes it back alive, we'll put the content up. In fact, if he doesn't make it back alive, but we get the content somehow, we'll put it up. Just sort it out and let us know. Send us the invoice. Nick, while we've got you here, we've got to make the most of this appearance. There's a big heavyweight fight actually taking place this weekend on a Sunday, of all places, Gibraltar. We're not going to refight that war, but Dillian White against Ebenezer Tete. Ebenezer Tete, former opponent of Daniel Dubois, of course, although it didn't last very long. You might not even remember having fought him. But Dillian Whyte, I haven't seen him in the ring since March when he went past Christian Hammer. If anything, this seems like a step down from Christian Hammer, and it's not easy to do that these days. Hammer used to be quite useful back in the day. looking at Dillian White, his recent form, inactivity obviously as well, what do you assess he might still have to offer the heavyweight division in 2024?
I think Dillian's just trying to stay relevant. You look at his last fight, Christian Hammer, but a bit of a washed-up heavyweight, really, to be honest with you. Tong's a strong, tough guy, but, you expected Dillian to go out there and knock him out like he did. I think Tete, he's not fought much since he was beat by Dubois. I think he's had 4 fights, is it, since he fought Dubois in 2019?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a good record, 23-1, but realistically, if Dillian White's got half of what he's shown left, it's going to be a pretty easy night's work for him. And I think it's just about trying to stay relevant for Dillian White and hoping that he gets one of those big fights out in Saudi for a big payday and possibly, sail off into the sunset after it, depending who that's against. But whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. I don't know if the Saudis are going to be willing to pay the sort of money that he'd probably expect, given his previous accolades and challenging for world titles, the fight with Tyson and being number 1 for so long. But I think maybe his, Father Time's going to play a role in that, and I don't really think there's much to see from White really going forward. He's maybe got one big fight left in him and a payday, but I don't really think he can challenge for a world title again.
Is it tricky in a sense then, because of what you've just said, finding the right opponent? Because a win over someone like Tete, even if he beats him in the first round, he's still not done better than Dubois did against him. That's not the sort of performance that's going to get him a big fight necessarily, or get people clamoring for a big fight for him. But if they put him in against someone half decent, because of where he is in his career, we might see that as a risk. He'll get knocked off before the payday that sends him into the sunset. Like, how, if you were his team or his management team, how do you match him at this stage?
I think very carefully. Like I said, he's realistically, he's just looking to make as much money as he possibly can with whatever time he's got left, and keeping active and keeping relevant is the only way to do that. So, yes, it's a bit of a tricky one, like you say. I think on paper, you look at it, a guy's 23-1. Sounds like a great opponent. It'll probably push him a little bit up the rankings, probably keeps him active, keeps him training. But yeah, it's a difficult one. And the thing is as well, the risk has got to equal the reward. So if the money's not there to take the risk, why would they do it? He's already made a lot of money. You don't want to tarnish your reputation now at this stage in his career unless it's in a big fight for a load of money. So I can't really see. I don't know. Listen, be interesting to see what happens. You never know how Joshua, what's that's going to pan out with him and Fury. I think that's the fight for Joshua now, but you never know. I don't know. Very difficult to predict now with the way the landscape is and the way things have moved on since Dillian's been out of the ring. So be interesting to see what happens.
Well, the rematch with Joshua, which was of course aborted last year or the year before, whatever it was, with the failed drug test, that seemed like a natural even now. Once White served his time, he's come back, assuming he gets a border control license or they let him fight on a foreign license, whatever. That seemed like an easy one. Joshua's lost to Dubois. He needs a fight to come back in that he feels he can win, get his confidence back, but also one that's going to sell at the box office. A rematch with Dillian White seemingly would do that. And then for Dillian's case, that's the big payday. He wins, he gets more big paydays. He loses, there'll be enough to sail off into the sunset, as you alluded to. But now, because everyone's talking up the possibility of Fury Joshua finally happening, and I think there's a bit of urgency around that now as well, because Joshua's lost his last fight, Fury's lost his last fight. So people starting to think, whoa, are they just past? Are they just going over the other side of that hill now? We need to get this done before it disappears forever. You don't want it to be as late as Pacquiao Mayweather or even Brooke Khan. So now it seems like the likely next opponent for Joshua is probably Fury, which is a much bigger fight than a rematch between Joshua and White. It kind of leaves White potentially in no man's land, especially if he's not visible to the general public at large, because he's not on the major promotional platforms and he's not fighting in the UK or on the Riyadh shows. So he's in a bit of a tricky position. If it's not Joshua next for Dillian White, if he goes the Fury route, who does that leave for White that you think could make a big kind of payday for him, big commercial spectacle?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for White because I think with the troubles that he's been having outside of the ring, he's had to fly under the radar. The best thing for him to do was to really stay quiet, say nothing, and let people, over time, people forget whatever's gone in the past, you know what I mean? So White's not really had a choice and putting himself out there too much. Now, I think the fight's taking place in Gibraltar, but I don't actually even know if it's taking place under the British Border Control.
Don't think
So,
so.
nah, so I mean, that you can read into that what you want, but that probably shows you there's still maybe a few outstanding issues in place there. I know his last fight was in Ireland before that as well. So, yeah, listen, I think it's like who needs him? Or does Joshua need him? Definitely not. Joshua's made hundreds of millions, and I don't think he needs to give Dillian White an opportunity to beat him again unless it's meaningful. So, for who else could he fight? It's probably, I really don't know. I really don't. I can't think of anybody in particular that, like, as a fan, I really want to see him fight. Unless it was Joshua, unless it was, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling to come up with anybody. To be honest, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's issues, so to speak, with the board, but I don't think he currently has a British license. So I think, it's going to be a struggle to fight on shows in the UK and also the ones in Riyadh because the board administer those as well.
Yeah.
So he does have a foreign license from the US. The board do have precedent for letting UK fighters compete under foreign licenses, Tyson Fury being the most famous example of that. So perhaps that's an option going forward, but maybe it just wasn't something they wanted to do for this particular one. But yeah, Gibraltar's hardly a boxing hotbed. I'm sure people will be tuning in and watching it just to see how he looks and how much he's got left and so on. But that's the other thing. If it's all over within 90 seconds, 2 minutes, like it was against Dubois, what does that tell us? Doesn't really answer those questions about Dillian White. And will there be boxers out there, like you said, Joshua doesn't need him, but other fighters, will they want to take the risk against Dillian, not knowing how much he's got left? Because he could be a great name on someone's record, but the flip side is he could have a bit more left than people suspect and really upset the apple cart.
Maybe the loser of one of the fights out in Saudi. I mean, maybe not Joe or Daniel, but yeah, like Joe and Dillian White have got previous, so maybe if Daniel was to lose that or Joe loses that, maybe the loser of that fighting Dillian. I don't know if the loser of Zhang or Caballero could maybe fight him. One person I would quite like to see fight him is Martin Bakole. They had a bit of a dust. Remember they had that dust up over in Poland? Big fight on the camera. And that's potentially a fight that I would personally quite like to see. But listen, for the casual, maybe not, because they don't know enough about Martin, and maybe they're not aware enough of Dillian at the moment for that to be a viable fight. But listen, you never know. That could be an interesting fight, and one that I know for sure Martin would be very much interested in if he got the opportunity. But I think, listen, he's got a fight in March, possibly against Efe Ajagba, and then he'd become the mandatory for the IBF. So maybe even him, he doesn't really need Dillian White, but that could maybe be a fight that would be interesting.
Well, in the last few minutes we've got left, I will ask you for some more heavyweight predictions as you're here and you've got expert experience with a lot of these guys. But Stephen's actually asked Okolie against White. How would you see that playing out?
Yeah, listen, I think that, I've not even been thinking of Lawrence Okolie as a heavyweight because he's only had one fight there. But listen, it could be a fight. Both British fighters, both got a pretty big following in the UK. Could definitely, both proud. I think they're both in London, aren't they? So a bit of an edge there. Could definitely be a fight, and probably a good step up for Okolie. See if he's got what it takes at heavyweight. He had a good performance at the weekend, but could definitely be a decent fight going down the line for him.
Okay, so we talked about February the 22nd, and we said about the Eliminator, or it's WBC interim title fight, I believe now, between Zhilei Zhang and his name's just suddenly gone. Caballero. Ajit Caballero. How do you kind of weigh that one up?
Yeah, listen, I favour Caballero. I think he's phenomenally fit. He's one of the fittest guys I've ever seen in the gym. And also outside of the gym and training, running wise, and his cardiovascular is unbelievable. And I think that's Zhang's biggest weakness, his gas tank. So we all know he's dangerous for the first minute of every round. And like we said before, he's a massive puncher. But I just think Caball's work rate, he'll put too much pressure on him and he'll break him down. I'm favouring Caball on that.
Is Caball's power underrated, do you think? Because we saw what he did to Makhmudov, and there's rumours of what he did to Joshua in sparring. But you see him more as a boxer generally, or most people do. But is his power better than people think?
Yeah, listen, he's got great power, but I think it's his body punching. I think if you look at the heavyweight division, it's probably him and Martin are the two biggest body punchers in the division. And the fact that he's so fit and he keeps the pressure on you the entire time, body shots are incredibly debilitating. And I just think that over time, he grinds you down, he gets you out of there unless you've got an answer to it. So I think his power is good, but I think it's more his fitness and the pace that he can set that really, grind his opponents down.
Well, I appreciate that. And we're only got a couple of minutes left, so I better get the poll result up. Modfather Vinny, if you can hear me, sorry for giving you so much stress earlier in the episode, but if you can put the poll results up, I would appreciate it. And we'll read that out. But Nick, just for the last couple of minutes, the one major heavyweight fight we haven't gone into detail about, and we haven't got time to go into detail per se now, is Usyk-Fury rematch, which I'm sure we've talked about before. Who do you see coming out on top in, 2 weeks' time? Or less than 2 weeks now?
Yeah, listen, I side with Tyson. I think what we've seen of Usyk on the night was the best performance that he can possibly give. I'm not saying he can't do that again, but I don't think we've seen the best Tyson Fury. I think he's going to go away, adapt his game plan. He knows what to expect coming back in there. And also, he's a much bigger man. If he can stay focused for the full 12 rounds, stick to the game plan, let him and Sugar set, and be A+, then I think he's got enough in the tank to beat Usyk. Great
stuff. Now, we asked you at the start of the show, thoughts on all the major promoters on DAZN. How do you feel about it? 61% feel pretty good about it, apparently. Mixed feelings, 28%, and only 10% feel bad. So, very positive at the moment. Maybe a good time to work for DAZN, it seems. Everyone seems quite happy about it. Really appreciate it, everyone who voted. If you haven't already, give us a thumbs up and a subscription if you're not a SecondsOut subscriber. Also, if you're watching this on playback rather than live, you can still submit your comments and we will respond to them even though you've missed the live chat. So please do that. Nick, really appreciate you joining us, mate. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully got some new fans in the chat as well. Maybe even converted Thunder Road.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
Well, at least you know who each other are now. That's the most important thing. But yeah, thanks to everyone who's tuned in, and we'll be back. Hopefully, I'll have a regular co-host back with me next week. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.